Welcome to Requiem, a safe place for us to discuss the loved ones who've gone missing, forgotten about by the world. Now, for reasons of my own, I will not be showing my face, but please know that I have lost too. Now, Pixel, would you like to go first? We all here have to share about ourselves, names and details. I want to see your face. I assure you, that is not necessary. You do not wish... Only way I'm going to share anything. Don't say I didn't warn you. Oh, dear God, no! Hello, everybody. My name is ProfPixel here once again on Madman with the Box, talking about Doctor Who, Redacted. Am I late? Yes, I am. In the grand scheme, it won't really matter. But if you are aware of what Doctor Who Redacted is, it's an audio drama podcast by, BBC Sounds. And it follows three friends who run a podcast together, and they are thrown into an adventure of a lifetime. But this episode has been out for a few weeks at the time of recording this, so you should definitely be checking it out. If you haven't been, you are missing out. This is some of the best Who that we've gotten in years, so make sure to check it if you consider yourself a fan. But, that being said, I'll give my non-spoilery thoughts before we dig into what happens in the episode. Overall, I feel this is another solid one after the events of the previous episode, episode 6. Our group is kind of in shambles, so we have to navigate what life will be like now. But that's all I can really say without digging too deep into the events. So, right now, I'll take a moment. Spoilers. If you don't want them, you need to stop right now. But then maybe come back, because I'll give thoughts towards the end, the drop-off, where it could lead to, and just my thoughts in general. So, with that being said, you've been warned, and hopefully see you soon. But for those of you brave enough to stick around, the events of this one they're actually quite short. We should be able to get through them really quickly. Basically, Cleo and Shauna are now on their own. The episode starts with them listening to this ad for a woman who calls herself Requiem and describes the purpose of her group. A support group for people who've lost close ones. The ones that seem to just disappear. And it offers a special discount for anyone who can provide information on the Doctor. And, of course, as we've heard in previous episodes, Cleo says, she mentions the Doctor! And Shauna's like, who? Some people get tired of that. I don't know why. But that's kind of a side note. But Shauna wants to go ahead and do that, and so she explains how this is from Abby's laptop and saying that we can go ahead and keep investigating. We don't need her. It'll be okay. And Cleo basically accepts. We get some slice of life stuff because Cleo picks up her phone, and it's her grandmother. Not Cleo's grandmother, Shauna's grandmother. And ultimately, her grandmother wants her to just settle down with some girl somewhere because she's too busy pining after Abby. And then, speaking of Abby, we get to one of the tensest conversations in the episode when Cleo calls Abby saying that she doesn't really want to hear why. She's still very pissed off at her, and as I described in my last review, Cleo's is far more justified, that I feel, than Shauna's anger was. And she says, if we're going to continue to be friends, you are going to have to change. Or there's just no way they can continue. And Abby she's not hearing that. Why? Because ultimately she wants to explain that being with UNIT is a good way for them to get access to information that they wouldn't have otherwise. Sure, they have a slice in the adventure thus far, but UNIT has resources, and while some of their stuff may seem shady, especially to Shauna, who has no trust for anything under the government, there's just too much at stake for them to deny themselves this. And the last thing we're going to hear from Abby is her and Osgood, because after this she's with Osgood, and there is this terrible scream, and it's stopped, and Osgood explains that this is actually the noise that comes from a parallel reality that manages to accompany the people who disappear. And it just seems to be this terrible scream that we actually kind of heard from the UNIT agent a couple episodes ago. And Abby says, that's terrible. It sounds like that the person's in so much pain. And that's when Osgood explains, there's nobody there. Technically, it's not an entity. Even though it has a humanoid shape, it's just this blur. It's not real. And they have to go ahead and keep studying it to see if they can understand. That's when they resume it. And it is indeed a terrible scream. But now it's time for the Requiem group. A few people get to go and they explain some quick things about what they've lost, and they're listening. There's a man named Muhammad, a woman, I think she's named Rachel. And Rachel seems to cut off during her conversation. And they just move past it. And Requiem wants Shauna to share. And Shauna, again, we're dealing kind of with slice of life stuff as well. She's explaining how she's missing Abby, but it's not a real problem. But she does continue to go on about how she's basically completely in love with Abby. And she's furious at her, but she's still in love with her. Cleo is asked to speak next, and she says her brother's disappeared, but she doesn't want to talk about it, so let's just go back to Muhammad. But Muhammad has disappeared. No, they can't remember Muhammad. Only Cleo does. And even though the camera's on, and it's just looking like he's blurry, she still sees he's right there. But Requiem and Shauna, they just don't see him. And Shauna's getting worried as she watches as Cleo just starts marking down the names of everyone in the group, because she sees people are forgetting again, and she's the only one who remembers, and she asks, why am I like this? But finally she opens up about her father, about now Jordan disappearing, and how her mother and her have this relationship because of how she lives her life, and thus there's a struggle there. And she is comforted a little bit. Well, comforted might not be the right word. She is told by Requiem that the goal of a child is to outgrow a mother's view. And that's what Cleo's done. and it takes a lot to do that. But with the talk done, Cleo just wants to move on, talk to somebody else in the group about anything. And that's when they say, Who? Who else? It's just been us this whole time. The group started with about 20 people, but somehow it is narrowed down to Shauna and Cleo, because they're in the same room, and then Requiem. And that's when she's starting to freak out. And Cleo looks for her notes, but they aren't there. It seems to have disappeared as well. And this when Cleo gets kind of accusatory towards Requiem, saying that she's the one doing this. She might be the doctor. And that's when the voices start glitching. And that's when the laptop just seems to blow up. And this causes both of them to scream as the voice says, I'm coming for you. And it's clearly Requiem still, but that sounds a little threatening. I'm coming for you. Oh, yeah, that's nice. But the last thing we hear is the laptop. Even though it blew up, it is still going. And it's channeling through what sounds to be like radio stations. And ultimately, we hear the doctor. And she says, Cleo, I'm looking for Cleo Proctor. I'm the doctor, and you are in terrible danger. And she gives a warning and ends with saying, whatever you do, don't touch the ghosts. Which is actually the name of the next episode. But we can't get into that. We can't. We gotta stop here. This is where the end point is. I think it's a strong episode. When we go through it, there's a lot that's just them sitting down and talking, which I know sounds odd for an audio drama, but with how the conversation is held, though, it's clearly different. This episode has quite a bit to offer for insight on the characters. I still say that I don't feel Shauna's anger at Abby is really justified. She still, it still feels more that she's allowing her doubt to completely blind her to what could be the truth. There's a great mystery in who Requiem could be, but a lot of people seem to have figured it out, and at this time, it's already been confirmed, so it's kind of silly for me not to say it, but I hope you'll join me for the next video where I actually am able to discuss this in detail. But as for this episode, it's nice getting to hear Jodie Whittaker again. I knew from the beginning that we'd get very little of the Doctor in Doctor Who Redacted, but I'm glad for what we've gotten. Even though we don't really get to feel her involvement as of yet, she just pops in. I think this is, her third or fourth episode that she just pops in for a moment to have a word. Not even meaning to sometimes, but this time she certainly does. I'm a little concerned for Cleo now, because Cleo has learned her name. She now knows who the Doctor is, who the Doctor's been this entire time. But who knows where we can go from here. I hope Cleo will be okay. We only have, at this point, 3 more episodes remaining. So, will this be able to tidy itself together and go into a fully coherent story? That's a conversation for next week. But that's about it for this one. I really do love this show. If you do not, well, I don't know why, maybe you're not listening to it. You definitely should. I cannot recommend it enough. I want to ask you to please comment your thoughts down below. It helps the algorithm a little bit if you just even say how your day's going. But I really do love this show. I'd love to have some more conversations about it. So go ahead and leave thoughts below. Also, make sure to like and subscribe. Check out the other things on the channel. At the time of this recording, I have done a review on Out of Time 3, which has the 10th Doctor and the 6th Doctor, which, if you've been on the channel long, you know that I enjoy both of those Doctors quite a bit. And that's, of course, under Chris's vein of audio drama reviews, which is by Big Finish. But with Big Finish and BBC Sounds, we have a bright future for audio drama and Doctor Who. I can't wait for more. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time. Geronimo, Alonzi. See ya.